Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing, and where better a place to start than the contentious words of Oscar De La Hoya regarding Canelo Alvarez and his trainer, Eddie Reynoso. He began talking about Zurdo Ramirez and his fight against Dimitri Bivol. He was saying how excited he was for the fight and that he believed that Ramirez could win the fight. Now, in my previous video, I also said that this could be a gateway to stardom for both guys. Dimitri Bivol may be an elite level fighter already, but as a star name, a lot of people feel that Canelo had a bad night, or that he could win the rematch, or that maybe Dimitri Bivol was just too big, whereas if he beats Ramirez, it would be a second marquee Mexican name on his resume, and it can really start to open doors for him. It could start to make him more well known, not just to the Mexican market, but the American market. He'll be spoken about a lot more. You're then not going to be able to sell the line of he's boring if you're Bob Arum as a reason to not make the undisputed title fight with Beterbiev. So it opens a doorway for Bivol if he was to win the fight. It also opens a massive doorway for Ramirez because, as I explained in the last video, it would mean that he would potentially have avenged a defeat of another Mexican fighter, a Mexican legend, a surefire Hall of Famer. And I explained that that's how I felt that it would be portrayed. Well, that's exactly what Oscar De La Hoya came out and said in this interview. First and foremost, he said that, in his opinion, this was the opportunity for Ramirez to avenge that loss and do it for Mexico. And then he was later on asked, if that was to happen, would Canelo Alvarez go on to fight Bivol in a rematch, or would you expect him to want to fight Ramirez? And Oscar De La Hoya was saying, look, it would be a massive fight, the Ramirez-Canelo fight, and also, if Canelo was to fight Bivol again, this time, it would be even worse. Trust me, I know from experience, it would be even worse. He cannot beat Dimitri Bivol. He needs to work on his footwork. He's not light enough on his feet, and he needs to change trainer to do that. He's got to change trainer to learn how to be a better fighter if he's going to win. Otherwise, it's going to go the same way. So Oscar De La Hoya here is basically saying that unless Canelo Alvarez sacks Eddie Reynoso and moves elsewhere to a trainer that's capable of improving his footwork, which he believes is lacking, then he would suffer an even worse fate at the hands of Dimitri Bivol. Now, let me know what you think about this. Do you believe that this is a case of Oscar De La Hoya just having that beef still? You know, we know that there were some acrimonious circumstances in which these two split, Canelo and Golden Boy, of course. Is this something to do with that? Is this a runoff from that? Or is he just being honest? You know, I personally, myself, when I'm looking at certain fighters, they may be doing really well in their careers, they may be undefeated, and I might be looking at them with a specific trainer who's a very good trainer, but for one reason or another, I might think, you know what, it's just time to move on and try and acquire a new set of skills from a different type of guy. Prior to losing to Avanesian, I thought that Josh Kelly should have left Adam Booth. And although I picked him to beat Avanesian, I thought he'd have enough. I basically said in the preview video that maybe he would be best served to move elsewhere to deal with one or two specific weaknesses that I was speaking about back then. And I think Adam Booth's a brilliant trainer. So sometimes it's got nothing to do with whether a guy's a good trainer or not. It's just about whether you marry in that moment. Other times, people are very reactive. You know, a fighter will lose. Canelo Alvarez lost, and all of a sudden, oh, he should leave Eddie Reynoso. Prior to that, people were saying Eddie Reynoso is the best trainer in the world. It depends. Sometimes it's reactive. Other times, maybe you've just seen something and it makes you realize, okay, maybe this does need to happen. Take George Kambosos, for instance. I think Javier Centeno is a brilliant trainer. I think last year he should have got Trainer of the Year. He's fantastic. But if he's going to beat Devin Haney in the rematch, I personally believe the guy that he should move to, again, might be on a one-off basis. Doesn't mean you have to dedicate your entire career to a specific trainer, but for me it should be Robert Garcia. Because for what Kambosos needs to do to adjust, in order to become the guy that could beat Devin Haney, in my opinion, he would have to go to a guy like Robert Garcia. I'm not sure Centeno, with his style of training, is the right trainer for this specific job. So it's horses for courses type of thing. Maybe that's what Oscar De La Hoya is saying. Maybe it is genuine and there's no shade being thrown. Or maybe he's just saying Eddie Reynoso is not good enough, and to take Canelo to the next level, he's going to need a better trainer. Let me know what you think. Moving on from that, let's talk about Florian Marku. He will be fighting out in Albania, in the Air Albania Stadium. You know, Florian, for me, is such an exciting fighter. I'm such a big fan of his because he's so intense on camera. He's so entertaining, and then he backs it up in the ring with, again, a very entertaining style. Very successful kickboxing career he had before moving over to boxing. So he's not only a star in Albania, he's somewhat of a star in Greece too, because that's where he was based when he had his kickboxing career. The thing is with Florian Marku as well, he rubs shoulders and mingles with A-list celebrities in Albania. So when you think of what DAZN potentially had, Matchroom potentially could have kept Florian Marku, they could have signed him up on their books, he had worked with Eddie Hearn on multiple occasions. DAZN always speak about being a global brand, and Eddie Hearn always says, I'm a global promoter, I'm not just a domestic British promoter. Well, if you want to get people signing over to DAZN, getting subscriptions from the Balkans, whether that's Albania, whether that's Greece, whether that's Kosovo, these sorts of nations, surely you would have wanted to have kept Florian Marku. It would have made such great sense for DAZN. So not only was it a coup for Boxer, in my opinion, it was somewhat of a blow to DAZN as well, because this guy could be really built up. Let me know what you think. Moving on from that, if there is any question mark about the pulling power of Florian Marku, the one person that there is no question mark about is Floyd Mayweather. And he has come out and hinted that he would be interested to come back for a professional sanctioned fight. Not an exhibition fight, although he did say he would continue with those, but a proper fight. And apparently he wants 200 million to make it happen. The rumours are that it would likely be Manny Pacquiao. There have also been rumours that it could be Conor McGregor. Would you be interested in seeing any of those two fights? The Pacquiao fight, I mean, they both interest me, but the Pacquiao fight in particular stands out to me because Floyd Mayweather hasn't looked as sharp. He hasn't been able to maintain range as quickly when he's been facing these exhibition sort of opponents. And you just wonder, I always felt that Manny's skill set, the style of his fighting, would actually decline more quickly than Floyd's. In fact, I thought that actually had happened prior to their first fight. I didn't think that Manny's output was as intense anymore. And that's why I thought that Floyd would win a fairly comfortable fight. But the trajectory of that decline, when you've been inactive for so long, essentially, is going to be quite accelerated. It's going to be quite dramatic potentially, and Manny still looked good against Ugas. He lost the fight. He didn't look good compared to the Manny of old. We can see the decline right there. But if that was the first time you'd ever seen Manny Pacquiao fight, let's say I told you this is just some guy out of, I don't know, Albania, say, he's Florian Marku's cousin or something, we're going to throw him in the ring with Ugas, you're going to say, wow, man, that guy's a good fighter. I want to see more of him. He's proven himself to be able to hang at world level. Well, if Floyd Mayweather was to make a comeback tomorrow, with the amount of time he's been out and some of the waning reflexes that we saw against the YouTubers in these sort of exhibition fights, he just hasn't looked as fast or as sharp anymore. Is he going to be able to deal with the nature of Manny Pacquiao's approach? Or perhaps even a Conor McGregor, who may have learned how to pace himself a lot better in a boxing ring, which was a real problem for him in the first fight. Could that be a difficult fight for Floyd Mayweather at this stage? Let me know what you think about that and whether you'd be interested in seeing either of these two fights. I'll be honest with you, the curiosity would make me want to see it. Let me know what you think. Moving on from that, the legendary George Foreman has had to release a statement, and it reads as follows. Over the past 6 months, 2 women have been trying to extort millions of dollars each from me and my family. They are falsely claiming that I sexually abused them over 45 years ago in the 1970s. I adamantly and categorically deny these allegations. The pride I take in my reputation means as much to me as my sports accomplishments, and I will not be intimidated by baseless threats and lies. I am and will always be guided by my faith and trust in God. I will work with my lawyers to fully and truthfully expose my accusers' scheme and defend myself in court. I don't pick fights, but I don't run away from them either. Now, George Foreman, of course, was a monster of a heavyweight, one of the best ever, and with a terrific career. He had 2 terrific careers, one before he retired and then one after he came back out of retirement to become the oldest ever heavyweight champ. So George was a legend in the sport, but became even more successful when he left the sport, financially speaking. He made more money outside of boxing than he did in boxing. He sold that George Foreman grill. It became a hit globally. I myself bought a George Foreman grill many years ago. So, he became a star, George. And with that beaming smile of his, he converted his look, his persona that he conveyed to the world from this animal, this monster, this destroyer, to a lovable Uncle George, right? He had that sort of look about him, someone that you want to go and approach for a bit of advice and say, yo, Uncle George, I'm struggling with this and that in my life. And he'll say, come in, son, I know a thing or two about life. Let me help guide you. So it is somewhat of a blow, I guess you could say, to the boxing community and to the George Foreman fans around the world. Now, whatever the case may be, we do not yet know whether he is innocent or guilty. We justly and rightly live in a society where you are innocent until proven guilty. That is how it should always be in a free society. There are people that will make accusations for a whole host of reasons. Some of those are nefarious. They may have an axe to grind, or maybe they see a celebrity or somebody with a lot of money and they think, yeah, I can make a bob or two here. But by the same token, there are also innocent people that have greatly suffered at the hands of people in power or people in positions of power, and those people think they're untouchable. They're not used to being told no, and so on and so forth. And because of their power, the innocent victims are often afraid to come forward and speak up. So whatever the case may be, we obviously all wish that God gives us a just outcome here. Obviously, you would hope as a boxing fan that George is innocent of these things, but we have to let the justice system play out, and hopefully a just outcome comes about. So let's see how that plays out. Moving on from that, Deontay Wilder will be making a comeback, and there's been a few whispers here and there about who's next in line to fight him. We've already spoken about the potential of Derek Chisora. Shelly Finkel basically came out and rubbished that, and he said, no way, Derek Chisora's just about scraped a split decision win over Kubrat Pulev. We're not interested in that. Shelly Finkel also went on to say that maybe the winner of USYK and Joshua, maybe if Joshua wins, it's a huge fight in the UK. Frank Warren himself came out and said that he heard, this was on Talk Sport, that Robert Helenius is already being lined up as the fighter for the comeback. Now, let's say he was to beat Robert Helenius and then they were to go down the route of fighting the winner of USYK and AJ. Why would Shelly Finkel say maybe if Joshua wins a huge fight in the UK? Is that just a method of teasing the British fans? Or is that what he's wishing for? Because when you hear Tyson Fury talk as well about USYK and Joshua, he keeps saying, if Joshua wins the fight, I'm going to come out and have to beat up Joshua. The other day he said he'd do it for free. The fans would be allowed in for free. Obviously, we know that that's just talk. That can't possibly happen. No one's going to put up a site fee if they can't make a gate and stuff like that. But the point is, he's talking a lot about fighting Anthony Joshua. Whereas when it comes to Alexander Usyk, there's almost this approach of what's the point? Why would I want to slap about a middleweight? Now you've got Shelly Finkel saying maybe if it's Joshua, it'll be a big fight in the UK. What is going on here? Is this just because people are considering the finances and they're just thinking, listen, AJ Wilder would be massive. AJ Fury or Fury AJ would be one of the biggest fights ever if you're talking about the gate and the money that would be generated, possibly the biggest of all time if you're talking about that. So is it just that? Is it just a case of people being ambitious financially? Or is there more to this? Are they secretly hoping that Anthony Joshua beats Alexander Usyk? I know that is a narrative among many people. I'm not saying I believe this or I don't believe this. I'm not giving you my position on this just yet. I'm just wondering what you guys think. Do you think this is a case of them thinking Usyk's far too much for me? Both Fury would think that and Deontay Wilder would think that. There's too much of a risk. Maybe Fury sees himself as a supreme boxer and Usyk's just that bit better of a boxer, and he might think to himself, I have to adapt, fight like a big man, rough him up, and what if I can't get him out of there? Then would I lose the fight on points? It's too big a risk. Whereas I know deep down I can take out AJ because if I can't outbox him, I can raise the tempo and he'll gas. Maybe that's how he sees it. Maybe Deontay Wilder sees it and thinks, you know what, with this monster right hand that I've got, I'm going to land on AJ at some point. He likes to block a lot of shots with his arms, with his gloves. I'm going to get through at some point. Whereas Alexander Usyk's going to be changing angles. Or Luis Ortiz gave me nightmares moving to my left constantly and changing the angle. If Luis Ortiz's movement can cause me problems, what's Usyk's going to do? Is he going to take the right hand away from me? I can't afford to come back and then lose another big fight. So no, I want Anthony Joshua. Is that the mindset? Or are they not thinking like that at all and they're just thinking about the money and they're both very confident that they would win? Let me know what you think about that. Finally, let's talk about Ryan Garcia and Canelo Alvarez. Ryan Garcia, as you guys are aware, has been very critical of Canelo. I spoke about this in my last video. He's also come out and said that he would love to fight Canelo. If you're talking about fighters of the past that he would have loved to have fought. So there's definitely a bit between his teeth. He's got a bit of a grudge against Canelo Alvarez. That split with Eddie Reynoso obviously ended in acrimonious circumstances with Ryan Garcia. And Floyd Mayweather jumped to his support, Canelo's support this is, and he was basically saying how Ryan was always all over Canelo and so happy to be with him, and then all of a sudden he just wants to turn his back on him, and this is how ungrateful people are, and that he still needs to do an awful lot in boxing, and he needs to keep his mouth shut and learn from Canelo and stuff like that. Well, Ryan Garcia's responded, and he said they need the Avengers to stop me. They need the Avengers to stop me from talking. It could be Floyd, it could be Canelo, throw in all the GOATs. They need them all. They can't stop me. And I love that from Ryan. I know it's wound a lot of people up, but maybe this is the sort of thing that he needs to get that bit between his teeth. We know he's a pretty boy. We know he can go and do modeling. He can do whatever else he wants outside the ring. Maybe he does need to talk smack to continue to sell that out the ring product, the asset that is Ryan Garcia. But if he's genuinely wound up, and he's annoyed at the takes of the likes of CANELO and Floyd and everybody else talking, this could give him the right sort of fire that will make him focus on his boxing career. Because make no mistake, regardless of how people talk about this kid, he can fight. He is quality. He's arguably, and I'm not saying he is, but he's arguably the best of the four kings. He's supremely talented. I wouldn't rate him at number one. You'd have to have Devin Haney above him at this point, right? But we're just talking about in terms of ability. He's the real deal. Now, again, I'm not saying he beats him. Maybe he doesn't. But he's right there in terms of talent. If he can hone that, you're talking about a serious problem. And for him to be able to hone that, maybe he needs to get that fire in his belly. And Joe Goosen might be the sort of guy that will throw that fuel on the flame in that belly. Or do you think I've got it completely wrong? It's just an arrogant, mouthy kid who's never going to learn, and he's the next Adrian Broner, who, by the way, is going to be fighting Omar Figueroa soon. Is this a case of Ryan just being a little brat? Or can you see a bit of fire lighting up there? Let me know what you think. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch the video. Please take the time also to hit a jab on that like button, a right cross on the notifications button, and an uppercut on the subscribe button. Take care, and God bless.